Greetings, fellow Earthlings, and welcome to Tales from the Hoop, a podcast dedicated to diving into the weird, wild, and wacky stories from basketball history. I'm your host, Ricky Freck, and today I'm telling a story about one of the great cheating scandals in basketball history to my brother.
Lazy Dave.
Now, last time out, I did promise you, Dave, that we were not going to be talking about the NBA. We're going to be talking about the NCAA because I know
Hmm.
you love college basketball so much. In fact, I
Far,
believe you said the quality of basketball in college is better than the NBA.
far superior product in every way. Those NBA players, they just don't want it hard enough. They don't
That's
have
true.
the
Yeah.
drive and determination that the NCAA players do. So
Yeah, definitely right on that one. Okay, so I do want to stress up front that this story is very, very long if we went way in depth on it. So I try to cut it down as much as I can, but there's a lot more out there if you're interested in learning more.
I'm so
Also,
excited.
there's a lot of names in here, and I did not look a single one of them up. So if I mispronounce a name, I
Hey,
apologize, but there was like 70 names or something, so I just didn't bother because I
I
figured
feel like,
I'm gonna mess up
yeah,
some of them no matter what.
if it goes back to a certain point anyways, I mean, we can't pronounce them names anyway. That's not our fault. Come on.
Yeah, there are a few fun names in here. I don't know about fun is not really the right word. I don't, before World War II, Adolf was somehow a popular name.
Can't believe, well, I'm not sure what would have been the downtrend there. That's,
We may or may not have two Adolfs involved, and neither one of
oh
them are the
boy.
one you're thinking of.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so
Yep.
let's go ahead and dive into this so we can get out of here and go watch night one of the NBA play-in.
Oh, so excited. Can't wait.
Yeah.
What a
Uh,
good play-in it's going to be. And I'm really hoping that the Grizzlies make the playoffs, but
mm,
that also probably means that the Thunder either play them or the Warriors, and that it seems way worse than playing the Kings or the Mavericks. So I don't know what I want to happen, but
I want
I'll I'll be happy either way.
I want the Warriors to lose. I want the Warriors to not make the playoffs,
Hmm.
and
Weird.
I would like it to be Grizzlies, Kings making it through. That's my
I
hope.
I would like the best teams in the playoffs, so I would like the Warriors to make it, but
I
that's
just
okay.
I I'm not a Steph Curry hater as much as I used to be. And I've never been a Steph Curry hater. I've been a I don't like how valuable the three is now. Hater, not a
Hmm.
Steph Curry hater, but I am almost as much of a cat hater as I am a Draymond hater. And
Ricky wants to go back to the way we did things in the 60s, folks. No three-point line. If you're 7 foot tall, game breaker, basically. Stupid.
I miss
Three pointer is the best invention ever, and I'm so happy we live in the era that we do.
I miss when the Pistons and the Spurs were having like 87 to 89 games in the
Ugh,
early 2000s.
disgusting.
Those were the
Speaking of the
days.
Pistons, though, we do have our series lined up.
It's true.
I can't wait to rub it in your face when Cat has 42.
Hey,
Oh
hey,
man,
hey. Pistons are 3-1 against the Knicks this year so far.
regular season don't count.
They're in the leads. They're in the lead at this point. I
Although
said
is
the Knicks would win. I said it would be a series. And
yeah.
then I read ESPN today and 11 of 11 experts picked the Knicks and like one of them had it going to 7. So
Yeah, I mean, it depends on Jalen Brunson. He's got to stay healthy, and he might not. So I could,
I don't want to say let's hope so, but I want him to not play well but not be injured.
yeah, that would be better
All right,
for
let's go
you,
ahead and
anyways.
hop into this thing. So, on January 21st, 1927, a few years
Oh
before I
boy.
was born, Wabash College athletic director Harry Schaller reported to authorities that a pro gambler had approached his star player, Benny Duvall, with a bribe to fix the game against Franklin College of Indianapolis.
Okay,
Duvall
okay.
declined, and he actually scored more points in that game than the entire Franklin College team, and the final score was 47 to 32. So,
Okay. So not crazy,
yeah, no,
but
yeah, but still,
it's a lot points when the other team only has 32. So
yeah. The that was the first known instance of gamblers trying to fix college basketball.
Mm,
But
known.
yeah, but it was far from the last. In
Oof.
in fact, one bookie approached Utah coach Vidal Peterson ahead of the 1944 NCAA title game and asked him how much it would cost for him to lose to Dartmouth. Now, fortunately, Peterson responded with a quick punch to the face, and they just went on and played the game normally.
Hey, love to see it.
Yeah, some
Athletes
people have it.
sticking up for the game.
Some
That's
people
right.
have integrity. But the next year, five Brooklyn College players were arrested and confessed to accepting $1,000 from gamblers with a promise of 2K more if they threw their games against Municipal, University of Akron, and St. Francis College.
This is 1927,
No, this is 1945.
45.
We
Okay,
jumped.
so $2,000 is like $600,000. So that's crazy that they gave that
Um,
up.
Not quite, but it is a lot more. Actually, I did write some of the conversions down for you later, but I
Oh,
did not in this
my bad,
case.
my bad, my bad.
The Brooklyn Five scandal rocked the sport, but it would prove to be peanuts compared to what came next. During the 45 season, so this that same year, City College of New York player Lenny Hassman approached star player. Do you have something?
Lenny's is just a great name. I love the way that rolls off the tongue. Lenny Hassman.
Lenny Hassman. He approached star player Paul Schmones, I'm not sure, with a
Mm.
bribe.
We went from such a great name to like a what the F name
You
immediately.
don't like Schmones?
I mean, I like it, but
Hmm.
one of them sounds like the main character in Remember the Titans,
Okay.
and the other one sounds like a guy that runs a bowling alley.
I feel like they both kind of sound like
Shimone.
a guy that runs a bowling alley.
Shimone's Lanes.
Anyways, Hassman was a reported dumper. Any guesses what a dumper is?
Not. I won't say where my head first went.
It does not reference his bathroom habits.
I would guess dumper in a basketball betting context has to do with. Oh, actually, I'm going to switch up. He play basketball? Do we know that yet?
Yeah, he was a player on the basketball team.
Okay, sorry. I think that dumper would be he's going to pass it off every time to somebody else to try and get them their stats. But he's like he's in on the bet,
Uh-huh.
but he can't be the one to like score like the points, so he's like dumping it off to his teammates to try and get them to be the one that maybe they don't even know they're in on the bet, you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
he just takes the ninth guy on the bench and he's like, yeah, bet that that guy's going to get 10 points. And then every time he touches the ball, swings it to that guy to try and get him the ball, to try and get the points, to
That would
make the
be that
spread.
that would be a great scheme, but it just refers to his propensity to engage in pump and dump schemes as a
Mm,
better.
okay. So
So
he could be in line for a future presidency. Just kidding.
wow, not to get political. Schmones told coach Nat Hallman about the bribe, and Hassman was immediately removed from the team and reported to the university's hygiene chairman. Any guesses what a
Yikes.
hygiene chairman is?
Just making sure everyone's crystal clean in
Crystal
in
clear.
in both mentally and physically, you know, making sure they're taking showers after the game, but also making
You
sure
think they
their
just have,
grades are
you
up.
think there's a man that stands in the locker room and is like, hey, 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 did you take a shower? You better get in there,
Yeah,
buddy.
yeah, he stands at the door afterwards and
This
sniffs them as
isn't
they're going
this
out.
isn't my fifth grade gym class, Dave. I think these people know how
Mhm.
to take showers.
Back in the 20s, though, I think they were the hygiene coach would do that, and then he'd also make sure that their spirits were clean from gambling or, you know, just making sure their life was on the straight and narrow at all times.
You're close enough. That's just the old thing they used to refer to athletic directors as for some
Okay.
reason.
Hygiene.
Yeah, hygiene.
It's kind of weird.
It was not like my PE coach back in the day, making sure we were putting on deodorant. We had a kid in sixth grade when we were very first learning what deodorant was,
Mm.
who would, after we had our gym class, he would take off his shirt and he would lather his whole body in like that roll-on deodorant used for your armpits. He would just like spread it over his chest and stomach.
Okay.
I was like, "What are you
Yeah,
doing?"
that's
And he was like, "I got to get the
I
stink out." I was like, "Okay,
is that not what you're supposed to do? That's so weird.
not
We
to my
just had
knowledge."
I think it was I don't know if it was just popular for our time or started around then, but like Axe body spray was getting to be a
Mm,
big deal.
yeah.
And people would just cake it. I mean, just whole body spraying all over the place. It was really just, you didn't even need it. If you just stood in the room where
Hmm.
everyone else was spraying, it was gonna
You should
waft
walk
over
through
all of
it.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
What I feel like that's well known for not smelling good.
I mean, in sixth grade, it we thought it did, so it didn't really matter.
Your smellers are different. Is it's like taste? Your smells can change.
No, no, no. Like, even if something smells bad now as an adult, you don't like as a kid, you're just like, oh, this smells like the best thing. Like you watch the Axe commercial and it says that it smells good, and so you're
You're
just
like,
like,
oh, this
oh,
smells like sex.
yeah, I'm
Okay,
gonna get
got it.
laid
I understand.
if, and
I'm
so
gonna get
all of
laid
us
in
are
the sixth
just,
grade. I mean, it's happened. It's happened.
hey, that's when you start thinking about it, you know?
True. Okay. Another player, William Levine, was approached by gamblers. This is another CCNY player. They play a
Okay.
very prominent role in this scandal. Was approached by gamblers to rig a game against the University of Syracuse, but he declined.
Mm,
However, there was still supposedly a fix in for the January 14th, 1948 game against the Orangemen, though bettors put their money on Syracuse and they lost 50 grand, which in 2024 money is $650,000.
dang. Yep.
Even still, despite the bettors losing out in that case, players, coaches, sports writers, and fans all knew that something big was brewing. It was very much coming to the surface how much gambling was influencing college basketball, and it was only a matter of time before something drastic happened. So, the 1951 point shaving scandal, which is what we're going to talk about today, overtook several schools all around New York City, was highly concentrated around Madison Square Garden, though the cheating certainly was not limited to just NYC.
Mm.
The first arrests kind of involving the scandal happened in 1949 when Manhattan District Attorney Frank Hogan, who's an important figure for the story, so remember his name, arrested four men for attempting to bribe David Shapiro, the co-captain for the George Washington University. What they're GWU. I was gonna say I knew their nickname because I think they're the team that made it pretty far in the tournament in like 2011, but I can't remember it off the top of my head now. But those people tried to get him to fix a game against Manhattan College at the Garden. Shapiro, when they came to him, one guy came to him, one of the guys came and said, "Hey, will you fix this game?" He said, "Only if you pay me up front." And
Yeah,
so the
great.
men refused to do that and instead went and targeted his uncle.
Mm.
When the police learned about this, they had an officer pose as Shapiro's uncle and caught the men. And Hogan and his crew believed this to be a one-off incident, but as we're going to see soon, it quickly turned into much, much more. So it all kind of came to a head on December 28th, 1950, when jeweler turned gambler, this is another important person to remember, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, Salvatore T. Solazio, tried to
Oh,
fix a doubleheader that featured CCNY taking on Arizona and Long Island going up against Western Kentucky.
okay.
However, his bets fell through because CCNY accidentally lost. They were trying to keep it close to match the spread and lost the game to Arizona. And then Long Island pulled the double cross and scored 13 straight points in the last 2 minutes to beat Western Kentucky by 7.
Oh, dang.
So that started to come out. And then there was so much cheating happening around this time. That one we knew about. And then all the other stuff we knew about that. The New York Journal American's Max Case started to investigate from the press side.
Okay.
In early 1951, he took all of his information, everything that he'd put together to Hogan, and Hogan asked him to hold off on publishing it so they could wiretap people and surveil individuals related to the case.
Good
During that,
Lord. This
during
is Deep, deep stuff.
Oh, it's going to get way deeper. This is why it has
Okay.
to go. This is why I have to cut down on a lot of stuff because you could talk about a lot of this stuff for a whole episode. This could be a multi-parter, but I didn't want it to be because I'm trying to
Okay.
keep away from those as much as I can. So during that same time period where Case and Hogan were working together, the Brooklyn Eagle, another paper in New York, released a report that the New York Police Department had been suppressing records about several fixes happening in and around New York City.
Okay. So it
Bookie,
is all over the place. Yeah.
it's
I
all over the
mean,
place, all over. Bookie
when you
Harry
got the feds
Gross,
on your side,
yeah. Bookie Harry Gross and his brother Frank had engaged in widespread bribery of city police, which led to the resignation of New York Mayor William O'Dwyer, Police Commissioner William O'Brien, and several other officers who had accepted bribes
oh,
from the two brothers.
brutal. I've always, this is not correct what I'm about to say. I want to be very clear.
Okay.
Every time I hear about bribes,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I would probably take a bribe too. Like, I just feel like the risk reward, obviously, if people are accepting like humongous bribes for like very dangerous crimes that are going to put a lot of people at risk, that you don't want to be involved in that. But like, let's say I'm a
You
cop
mean,
and
do
I
you
pull
mean like
somebody
cheating?
over.
You mean like cheating a bunch of desperate people out of their money and gambling? Like that's not a major crime that's going to affect a lot of people?
People were gambling, that's on them. I mean, that's
But the pretense of gambling is that you're gambling on something
no,
fair.
you're already making me feel bad, but let me finish. Like
Okay.
if I pull somebody over
Uh-huh.
and let's say their ticket's gonna be $90, it's gonna go on their record.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'll give you $100 bill to just walk away.
Mm.
Why not? Like they still felt the amount, right? But it's not
Yeah.
gonna go on their record. They're not gonna be dinged. Like they get to stay out of a day of court. Yeah, I just maybe think bribing cops isn't that big a deal. Now again, if it's done widespread and people are going to get hurt, I
I
just
feel
feel
like
like there's different kinds of crimes, right? There's violent crime, and I don't want to look the other way on that, but like little stuff, parking tickets, just take some money.
so
Everybody's happy.
I
No
feel like I
one
feel like you've
like
walked into
you're
this
okay
bit and you're immediately regretting you walked into this bit. Like,
100%,
oh,
but it's not a bit like I've thought a million times. If I bribed a cop for a speeding ticket, which I've only had a couple. It's not that big a deal.
yeah.
But like I still feel the weight of having to pay somebody, but then he doesn't have to report me and, we just go our separate ways. Everybody feels good about the transaction.
I think the counter argument would be if a cop is letting speeding tickets go for money, that eventually it's a slippery slope to letting rich people off the hook for everything because they can pay for everything, which
That's a
some
good
could
point.
argue is happening currently in some countries that exist around the world.
Kind of already happening.
So maybe it doesn't matter, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Sorry. I take it back. I love the law and we should all follow it. Whatever. It's lame.
I think that more people should be arrested for bad driving. I think that you should be, as of today, because I almost got hit three
Wow.
times on my drive to get coffee. I wish you could make citizens arrests for people who just pull out in front of you when you're driving 50 miles an hour and you can barely stop in time before hitting them. And then they just
I
look at
think
you like it's your fault.
I think we should all have paintball guns, and
Oh, that'd be awesome.
if you can get tagged, then you have to take your ticket. Like if you cut me off and I can in time, like I guess the worst drivers would get away because they'd be driving so fast all the
Yeah.
time that they never get hit.
There
Okay.
are there are so many bad drivers here in Memphis, and I used to not really get a lot of road rage or like honk my horn, but I lay into that mother effer these days.
I think we can all agree I should be nowhere near law enforcement or the rules and our upholding of them. So,
Or on the other hand, maybe you should just be the next president. Okay, so
a
the first arrest started in January. It began with Manhattan College, the Center for Manhattan College. I think this might be a typo and it might be Julius,
hmm,
but I've written down here Junius. Junius
mm,
Kellogg had been offered $1,000 to shave points against DePaul. At the time, he was working a minimum wage job at a frozen custard shop, but he initially turned down the bribe. Instead, he went to his coach, Ken Norton, who referred him to Hogan. Kellogg wore a wire to a meeting with Hank Poppy, who also had played for Manhattan College. And Poppy at the meeting explained how the point shaving scheme worked, and he claimed that at the time even professional players were involved. So after the game, Poppy, the Manhattan College co-captain John Burns, and then fixers Cornelius Keller and two brothers who were also fixers, Benjamin and Irving Schwartzberg, were all arrested. The latter three were convicted felons and had paid players about $40 a week and $3,000 per game to lose against Siena, Santa Clara, and Bradley, and then $2,000 a game to beat the spread against San Francisco and NYU. So they have been paying players on the Manhattan College team for quite a while now. And after being arrested, the two players that have been arrested as part of it, Poppy and Burns, and it might be Pope. It's Poppe. I don't know. They
Okay.
asked why
Yep.
they asked why they were being targeted when so many other players were doing it. So they were just like, "Hey, this is happening everywhere. Why are you? You know, it's kind of like
Yeah.
when you get arrested, not arrested, when you get pulled over for speeding when everybody's going fast. They're like, "Hey, everybody's doing this. Why
Right.
are we getting in trouble?"
Also, if everyone's doing it, is it really illegal? Just think about that.
I feel like you're saying some stuff on this podcast you're going to regret very quickly.
If no, 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 I'm just kidding. But if in a basketball game sense,
Hmm.
if both players, like let's say you go to Shark A and say if I score 20 points tonight, you're gonna make X amount of dollars,
Uh,
and the guy on the other team is like a Shark B, I'm gonna score 20 points tonight. Did anyone really like? There was the game. It was the game was gonna happen the way it was gonna happen.
yeah,
I guess
to some
I guess
degree.
player props is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Like if because a player is getting approached, not about losing a game generally, right? Like how can they throw an entire game?
Just like playing poorly or missing shots on purpose or I mean,
There's four other
we've
guys.
we've all seen hardball.
Hey, dang,
They
that's
throw they
true.
throw games in that. So what I will say is a couple of things. One, they had multiple people on the teams throwing games. It wasn't just one guy, as we'll talk about
Like
very
I'll pay
soon.
you out. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was also, and then on top of that, I will say I didn't really get into it, but there actually were quite a few instances of both teams taking bribes
Hmm.
and for different bookies. So like both teams were trying to keep the spread.
It benefits everyone. It seems like.
Well, no, but I'm saying like so one team was like, "Oh, we're gonna take this bet and lose the game for this bookie," and then another team was like, "Oh, we're gonna take this bet and lose the game for this bookie."
Oh,
So
that's
then they're like
hilarious.
both trying to lose, but make it look real enough that no
Right.
one's gonna catch on. So that definitely happened from time. I mean, it wasn't like all the time, but it definitely happened from time to time. We're like, "Oh, we both want to score this many points, so
No,
we
we
both."
have to lose. Yeah,
Yeah. So then
that's awesome.
the next month, so this would be in February of 1951, I believe, right? Yeah, February of 1951, the CCNY squad was stopped after a win in over Temple in Philly by two undercover cops. And at this point, I do need to point out because I know for a fact you don't know anything about City College of New York, correct?
I was trying to think of something. No, I have
Okay,
no a clue.
so in 1951, CCNY was actually something of a basketball powerhouse. They had come off a 1950 season where they were the only team in NCAA history to win the NIT and the NCAA championship in the same year. So that can't happen anymore. But back in the day, you could play them both, and they won both of them. So they were very, very good. So this team, this isn't like, sometimes you hear about bad teams throwing games. This was like the best team in the country.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, the year before the best team in the country, potentially throwing games. Okay. So during that stop, three players from the 1950 roster were arrested. So center Ed Roman, guard Alvin Roth, and former All American forward Ed Warner. All three were charged with fixing games alongside that guy I talked about earlier, Salvatore Salazzo. And then there was also involved was Henry Schaff, who played for NYU, and former Long Island player Eddie Gard, who by this point was
Okay.
actually
Yep.
working as an agent for Salazzo. So he had gone from being a player to now being a fixer.
That's actually pretty fun. I
Fun.
mean, I guess it's illegal, but like that's a kind of a cool story, like I fix so many games, I get in tight, and then I get to go teach other people how to do it.
Well, I'm glad you like that because it's going to happen quite a bit.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So, in custody, the three players admitted to shaving points to the tune of $1,500 per game.
Mm, nice.
Now of course, I want to be firmly at this point firmly on the side of players making their money. I think the NIL, while we need a salary cap, is overall a good thing. So I think these guys should have been paid back in the day and still should be paid, but not in this way, right?
Oh, come on. They had to. They didn't have
I mean, yeah,
NIL.
they had to be paid this way back then, but they should have been paid no matter what, or somehow they should have gotten more than just an education.
They got theirs. All I'm saying.
Some of
Had
them
to get it
probably
some way.
Some of them probably wish they hadn't gotten theirs, as we'll find out soon. So
I
Roman,
as a former athlete myself,
oh
and
geez, here we go.
also I have friends that were on scholarship, and they just someone would see them and recognize them and be like, oh, you play for the UCO, right? And they'd be like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, meals on us. And they'd be like, I actually can't accept this
Yeah.
because
Even
NCAA
post playing?
rules.
Oh
No,
no,
like while
then
they were
okay.
playing.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like that makes if you can't even do that, if you're gonna disallow me from receiving a meal that Raising Cane's is trying to give me, I should be able to bet on the games and receive. Sorry,
I
not should be able to, but I understand a player who does. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, I don't want to get onto too much of a soapbox or derail for too long. I hate
Yeah,
the
my bad.
NCAA.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think that it needs to be burnt to the ground. I don't know what should take its place, but when you have a guy, and this goes back pretty far, so our younger listeners might not remember this, but in 2007, maybe 2008, Des Bryant, before his senior season, went to have dinner at Deion Sanders' house. Not an NCAA violation, but he didn't know it wasn't an NCAA violation. So when the NCAA asked about it, he lied. For lying to the NCAA, he missed his entire senior season.
That happened.
No, well, actually, I think he played in two games, but yeah, he missed most of his senior season for doing the only thing he did wrong was not
Was
understanding
lying.
NCAA lies or
Yeah,
NCAA rules, which is
right.
wild. And so, I mean,
He just thought he'd get in trouble, so he's like, "Let me lie about this real quick."
and they were like,
Daggum.
I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I assume they were like, hey, did you do it? Did you do this? Like acting like it was something he would get in trouble
Oh
for.
yeah,
And then when he
yeah,
lied, then he got, it's just, I mean, and then you have corruption where, and again, part of it is I am a fan of a school that is a little brother to a lot of schools, despite us being very good in the sport I don't care about for the past couple years, not last year, notwithstanding, but you just see schools like Oklahoma State or SMU or Memphis or these schools that are like relatively big, like mid-sized schools, getting hit with all these penalties. And then everyone knows for a fact Alabama, OU, Texas are all doing
hmm
it worse than those schools are. But because they want to make money, they don't care. Those schools get
yeah.
hit with like little as we'll talk about soon. Those schools get hit with little
Okay.
tiny stuff happening to them.
Yeah,
But
they're
yeah,
like the high revenue schools are never gonna get
yeah,
dinged because yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so I hate the NCAA, down with the NCAA, but I still love college athletics. Okay, so back to our story. Roman, Roth, and Warner, the three players, were indicted for accepting bribes. Guard, the former player turned fixer, was indicted for bribery. Schaff, the player for NYU, was indicted for attempting to bribe his teammate Jim Brasco. And then
Okay.
Salazzo and Guard were indicted for paying $30,000, which in 2024 money is 400,000 to players over two seasons. So they've been giving away, not giving away, but paying players quite a bit of money back in the day.
Right. Right. Right.
At this point, I should also point out that Poppy, I don't know, was telling the truth about pros. Remember, he said that pro players were also doing it when he was talked to the
Okay,
guy
yeah.
at the when he talked to John Burns before he got in trouble. So yeah, so or at least he was telling the truth about pro referees. Aha, here we go.
Uh-oh.
Saul Levy, an NBA referee in his 40s, was arrested for fixing 6 games in 1950. He was paid $1,000 a game. And here I'm going to jump forward a little bit to the end of his story because we're kind of just going to leave him in the dust, but I want to make sure that we talk about what happened to him because he did go to prison for, I think, 3 years. After he got out of prison, he was found murdered because he had not upheld his part in rigging 3 more NBA games. So he got killed for not doing what he's supposed to do. Potential mob connections, got
Eesh.
shot and killed. I think shot. I don't. He might not have got shot. He got killed. We'll just say he got killed.
Okay.
Later in February, 3 more Long Island players admitted to accepting $18,500 for 8 games, including losing their NIT opening round game to Syracuse.
I mean, who cares? See, this is the type of stuff I'm like, who even cares? Like, and there ain't no integrity in being in the NIT anyway, so
But the NIT used to be a bigger deal than the NCAA championship, just so we're clear. It used to be a
okay,
bigger
oops.
deal. So the
Okay.
three
Well, that's
players,
different.
yeah, the 3 players were Adolph Bigos, Leroy Smith, and Sherman White. And Sherman White, just so you know, had was just been named a few days before he was arrested the Sporting News Player of the Year. He was going into his senior season and he was 77
Dang.
points short from the then all-time college scoring record. And as we'll talk about later, he missed out on an NBA career. The Knicks were planning to use a territorial pick on the 6'8 big man in the next year's draft, but he never played in
Sheesh.
the NBA.
Because of this or
Yeah, we'll
golly.
get into the
Okay. All right.
ramifications later. So more players were arrested, including Nat Miller from Long Island, Floyd Lane, Herb Cohen, Erwin Dambrot, and Norm Mager from CCNY. Dambrot had actually been drafted 7th overall by the Knicks, but he decided to go. He didn't want to play basketball, so he went to dental school at Columbia instead. So he didn't have to worry about any of the NBA stuff. But Mager was in the middle of his rookie season with the Baltimore Bullets, and the NBA made him the first player from the scandal to be banned for life. Before being banned, he had played in
Dang.
22 games, averaging 4.6 points and 2 rebounds.
Man, people really care about this gambling stuff. Golly.
Yeah, oh well, they care to a point, I'll say. We'll talk about it maybe a little bit soon. Okay, so the arrests continued into the summer. On July 20th, 4 players from the University of Toledo were brought in on point shaving charges after local bookmakers tipped Hogan off. The officials had actually raided the Toledo gambling establishments a few times over the previous months, but hadn't really found anything. And then they got some surveillance on a guy named Jacob Rubenstein, who was a Brooklyn bookie and friend of a Toledo freshman. I don't think he played on the team, but this guy was going to Toledo named Joe Massa. And Massa was the go between for Rubenstein and a player named Bill Walker. And he had introduced Walker to a guy, a fixer named Kay Klafowski, who offered
Okay.
Walker $250 to fix a game, to fix a game. So every game he got paid 250. And then he, this part's funny to me. He also offered him an additional $250 for every player he could recruit to join the scheme. So it was
Oh,
like a
heck
point
yeah.
shaving Ponzi scheme.
Literally an MLM
Yeah.
for basketball. Okay.
So you
Love
asked
it.
how in the world did they get the games fixed? They just would keep offering players more money and just to get more of them involved so they could
It's
take out as many
pretty
variables as
gnarly.
possible.
It's quite the business plan here. Like, I feel like anytime you, I guess to control the score, you kind of have to get as many people involved as
Hmm.
possible. But like, I feel like anytime you're trying to keep something secret, the worst thing you can do is tell someone else. So,
Right.
like, obviously, these guys are gonna get caught if they're like, yeah, tell all your friends about it. It's like, okay, so you just want to go to jail. Like, I
Sure
get,
seems like
yeah,
it.
I'm shooting myself in the foot with my other argument about just one player not being able to fix a game, but Like
Yeah, I mean,
this is
one
crazy.
one player could fix the game if it was, Wilt Chamberlain, but a lot of these guys probably not so much.
But I
They
guess
definitely need some
even
help.
like when I was thinking about it earlier, I'm like, even if you start sucking, your coach is just going to sit you. Like, but yeah, you're right. If
If,
it's like the
if
one
yeah,
superstar on the team,
that's an interesting question though. Is if Wilt Chamberlain is having an off night, did the coach sit him? Would the coach live if he tried to sit Wilt Chamberlain? Because
dude,
Wilt,
I mean,
I bet he had a bunch of power behind those fists if he wanted to.
yeah,
He's so
yeah.
large.
I can't, you're right. I mean, I can't think of a very good time that a superstar has been like, I guess I only watch NBA, so it's hard to, I feel like college is different. Like there's a more of
Maybe,
a
yeah. Well, like,
whole
would you?
team together. Like,
Do
I
you
don't
think they
know.
would sit LeBron if he's having an off night in a game that matters? Right? Like, sure, if they're
It,
playing nobody, but
remember that time it happened to Harden in like the Western Conference Finals?
no.
I think they had missed like 37 three-pointers
Oh, was it
and
that
they
was
were just
the
having
27-3 game?
a horrible night. And they set like in the fourth quarter, they just went on a run. I think Josh Smith was in that game. I'm surprised you don't know about it. It was like all the Houston others,
The others, yeah.
and they just like went on a run. And D'Antoni was like, I guess we're just gonna keep Harden on the bench. And it was like through overtime and everything.
Wow. I mean, D'Antonio is one of the few coaches I think could get like he could get away with that. Pop
Yeah,
could get away with that. Phil Jackson could sit Kobe, and I think it'd
yeah.
be okay.
I was at a game, Timberwolves game where it was over. I mean, both teams started the fourth quarter with their backups in, and
So they
then
weren't playing the
the
Knicks, that's for sure.
the Wolves cut it to like 12 points, and they never brought Ant back in until they tied it up and went into overtime, and then they finally brought him back in for overtime. But it was just like
I mean, you got to
he's
write it
got an off
sometimes.
night, so
Yeah,
yeah. I don't, but yeah, I think I feel like it would be more likely to happen in college
definitely,
because
for sure.
they're much more worried about the program than
Yeah.
the player themselves.
Well, not anymore, but back in the day for sure.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's no such thing as a program nowadays in college basketball. It's who can you recruit every year.
I mean, yeah, you're right. But
That's what we need a salary. We really need a salary cap. As much as I don't want the government to get super involved, we need a salary cap. Okay, so 2 days after the Toledo raid, Hogan made his biggest arrest when his office brought in a man by the name of Jackie Goldsmith. He was a former Long Island player and pro basketball player turned fixer. So he had played both professionally and in college, and then he switched to gambling.
so he knew
Reportedly,
all the tricks and trades.
correct. Reportedly, Goldsmith was, quote, the master fixer. After skipping his senior season of ball for unknown reasons, no one knows why he didn't play. Goldsmith started to build connections in gambling rings and organized crime. He then went to go play a little bit in smaller professional leagues and became the go to guy. If you wanted to know which match was being fixed, you talked to Jackie Goldsmith, and he would advise gamblers who to bet on. And anytime that his bets were wrong, he would accuse the team of double crossing him. He would say the players wanted too much money and they double crossed me.
Dang, ruthless.
Yeah. Hogan
Got to be
got
in this business, though, I
For sure, for
suppose.
sure, for sure. Hogan got even more arrests after 2 more days, as his office arrested 3 players from Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, which you were wearing a hat from right
Look at
now.
that. Look
Wow.
at that. Wow. I mean, so much of this was happening up in the Northeast
Yeah.
that I'm like, I was just waiting for you to say any other state, but
The Bradley University had fixed the NIT consolation game against Bowling Green at Madison Square Garden. So it's involving
mm,
teams not from there, but still it's around the garden. One
that's
of
so
those
funny.
One of those guys was Gene, and I'm definitely going to mispronounce this, Melchior,
Okay.
who
I like
was
Melkor.
yeah,
Sounds like a evil villain of like a sci-fi series,
yeah.
something. Sorry.
Well, he comes from Aliens,
Melkor.
Melkor. Yeah, he was then an All-American point guard and the first overall pick in the 1951 NBA draft.
Come on. Getting the first pick. Dang.
All 3 players and 4 more teammates admitted to fixing 4 games during the 1950 season. And this was an important step in the process of the investigation for Hogan and his team because Melkor and his teammates revealed that fixers were threatening players and their families with violence and even
Mm,
murder if they agreed to the scheme and didn't go through with it.
that's not fun. I want to be clear. When
That's not fun.
I was joking earlier about, some of this being okay. That's not that we don't want that. We don't want violence. Come on.
Yeah, and it was backed up a little bit because this part of the scheme also started to implicate a few high-profile criminals like Joseph. His name also looks like B, also almost looks like B Nintendo, but I think it's B Nintendo, a
Mm,
narcotics dealer based in Kansas City who was suspected of previously murdering gangsters Charles Bonaggio and Charles Gargata. So this guy was already known or suspected to have killed two men, and he was, one of the guys telling players they better follow through with what they said they were going to do.
yeah.
So the
We don't need
invest
this guy. Come on. I just want a little light, fun gambling, not this kind of stuff. Sheesh.
the investigation continued into the fall, and on October 20th, three former Kentucky players were arrested under suspicion that they had thrown the 1949 NIT first round matchup against La Jolla University of Chicago. At the time
Dang.
when they got arrested, Dale Barnstable was working as a high school teacher in Louisville, but Ralph Beard and Alex Groza were both playing for the Indianapolis Olympians in the NBA. And so these were not small time players. These were not run of the mill
Yeah.
Joes.
Yeah.
Beard was averaging over his 2 years, averaged 16 points a game and was coming off of making the NBA All Star team and first team All NBA squad in the 1951 season.
Good Lord.
Groza was a former second overall pick who, over his 2 years, averaged 22.5 points and 10.7 rebounds, joining Beard on the 51 All Star team and making first team All NBA both of his professional seasons.
It's
And
like
to his, what?
that's like 57 points in inflation points.
You were
Sorry.
not wrong. Even Barnstable was a pretty good player. He was third team All SEC in 1949. So he suspected that the Wildcats had thrown up to 11 games during the 49 season, and the trio eventually admitted to rigging 3 games, including the game that originally got them popped, the 1949 NIT game.
Hmm.
Beard, and this is where it gets not dark, but even worse, because Beard and Groza had signed a deal with the Olympians. So this is weird. This is strange, right? NBA is in its infancy to some
Okay.
degree.
Yeah.
They had signed a package deal. So they wanted to play together. So they signed a deal with the team for 70% share of profits and
Okay.
70% ownership of the team. So they
The
were
players get all this just to play
yeah.
on the team.
The two
Okay.
players were majority owners of the team, and they had the option
Yeah.
in 3 years to outright buy the
Oh
Indianapolis
my gosh.
Olympians.
That's so cool. I wish they would have.
I mean, imagine that now. Imagine if LeBron owned
That's so
70% of the
yeah.
Lakers.
Yeah. Which I think if you because of what LeBron has meant to Cleveland Cavaliers,
Yeah,
I feel like he's owed something. He's different. Like you can't say that about every single player,
yeah.
but I just think there is a point where if you win enough games, you should you should be able to get something. I don't know what it is, but like,
If he wants
eh,
to, LeBron James will absolutely become an owner of a franchise after he
yeah, that's
retires.
fair.
He has so much money.
I know, but they really are very, very expensive. Like
Yeah, but
you
I
have
mean,
to be in a different.
he has so much money and he has so much access to people that have even more money that he will I mean, like I think doesn't Grant Hill own a franchise as was part
I
of an
don't know.
investment group? I think
Maybe part of
I
one.
think Grant Hill might even own like an entire, not him on his own, of course, but I think Grant Hill's like
Yeah.
owns an entire Asian league.
League?
I think so. People look it up.
Dang.
I'm pretty sure that's true.
I
But
just
yeah,
think like ooh, this is actually a really good way to incentivize players staying with the team that drafted them, which
mm-hmm.
the NBA wants, I think. Um, well, they seem to care about it sometimes. It's anyways. Uh, like every year you're there and making all NBA teams should like give you a little bit more, you know, percentage. And, maybe you cap out at like 5%. But
Yeah.
if Luca would have stayed with Dallas his whole career and made 20 all NBA teams, and like
Hmm.
he should be able to buy in. That's stupid.
You'd be able to buy. Yeah.
Every good startup offers buy-in opportunity to keep their best people around. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well,
Come on, NBA,
are
step it
are
up.
NBA teams startups?
I'm just saying these NBA players need more. Okay, they don't
Yeah, they
make.
definitely don't make enough money to play a game. That's for
Agreed.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm joking, but I do think if you look at the top superstars, there
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
really be like a salary cap. Like they probably are worth
Yeah.
a lot more than what they are allowed to be paid.
Oh yeah. I mean that's absolutely true. I mean, but at the same time, yes, like LeBron is worth way more than he's allowed to be paid. Maybe not. Well, LeBron from a ticket selling standpoint, maybe not from a actual basketball playing standpoint, but probably still. But like Luca definitely is worth more than a max deal. But on the other hand, to some degree, and look, I don't want to get into politics, but it's kind of
Oh boy.
socialism in a way. But like, there's a lot of guys who make a lot of money who aren't worth what they get paid. So
Yeah,
like
that's
Luca's
true.
kind of like footing the bill, so the Jericho Sims of the world can make $5 million a year. I don't know what Jericho. I know no offense to Jericho Sims. That was just the
Yeah,
first name that popped in my head.
yeah,
And I also
fair
don't know
enough.
how much he makes. He might make less than that, more than that. But anyways, so Dwight Howard could hang around and make. I mean, he was a very good for a long time, so maybe a little different. But anyways, back to the story. So these guys were part owners of the team and could buy the team in 3 years if they wanted. And after they admitted to fixing games, they were outright banned from the NBA and forced to sell all of their shares at 10% of their original value. And
Dang, dude.
and obviously
Why
it
would you
turned.
even fix? If you have that sweet of a deal, I guess they don't know that it's gonna be that sweet
Yeah,
of a
that
deal,
yeah.
but
It happened. This
I can't
happened a year
imagine.
before. Yeah. It's
Like when
wild.
I'm in college, totally, like do anything for money. I
So
mean,
they
fix
fixed while they were
whatever
in
game you
college
want.
and then signed the deal.
That's fair.
So
Yeah.
they
Okay,
fixed
I'm
before
sorry.
the
Yeah,
deal.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And then obviously it's worked out in the long run for the Pacers, but the Indianapolis Olympians made the NBA playoffs every year they existed, but folded in 1953 partially due to this scandal. So the NBA
Golly.
lost a team as part of this scandal.
Again,
Kentucky,
if everybody's doing it, who cares? Come on. If every single team is taking these bribes and whatever.
yeah. Kentucky players Walter Hirsch and Jim Line also admitted to rigging games in 49 and 50. And this part's kind of sad because they implicated a guy named Bill Spivey, in rigging the 1950 Sugar Bowl and not the football. Is there a football Sugar Bowl? It was a basketball game. It's not football. But Spivey claimed he said that those claims were unfounded. And then this is annoying. Hirsch and Line were never charged with anything despite admitting to fixing, because where they admitted to fixing was in states that at the time didn't have anti-bribery laws for amateur sports. So they could not be
Good.
charged in their states.
Good.
However, the guy they accused of being in the fix with them, Bill Spivey, was indicted for perjury because he didn't truthfully testify that he had received a
Mm,
thousand dollars. And so we're going to
yeah.
talk about him a bit more in a minute because we definitely got to bring up what happened to him because it's again, I'm already annoyed. We haven't even got to what happens, but it's annoying what happens to him. And then the entire Kentucky basketball team then suspended themselves from play for the 1953 season after this all came out.
Come on. That's just virtue signaling.
Hey,
We
you're
already know
not
you did
wrong.
it.
You're not
Come
wrong.
on. Come on.
We'll talk more about
Just
how unwrong you are here in a bit. Then on October 27th, so 7 days later after the Alex Groza and Beard had got arrested, Hogan officially closed the investigation. In total, 35 players from 7 colleges admitted to taking bribes between 1947 and 1950. 86 games were fixed during this period across 17 states. The judges, and I did like this part from the judges. The judges in the case, and it was mostly one judge, but some of the cases went to other judges, but it was mostly one guy. He made scathing remarks to university officials for letting this go unchecked because there was places where like every game that the players fixed it, The AD was there and kind of knew what was
Mm,
happening. The boosters knew what was
yeah.
happening, and no one did anything. And he got especially mad when the Bradley players mentioned that they were taking courses like elements of tumbling and elementary
Mm,
badminton to stay eligible.
nice. I had a couple of those. Nothing, nothing wrong with a little hip hop dance every now and
Hip
then,
hop dance.
just for fun.
I just love the idea of elements of tumbling. Like you don't have to learn all of tumbling, just part of it.
Right. I
Or
mean,
like,
you got to start somewhere.
yeah, playing badminton at an elementary school level. I'm sure that's not what it actually means, but that's how it reads to me.
When I took beginner hip hop, we worked on uh four different dances. It wasn't even like the foundations of hip hop dancing. It was just like over the next 4 weeks, we're gonna memorize this dance, and then
Oh,
every 4 weeks we would just memorize a different dance to a different hip hop song.
did you learn how to do the stanky leg?
There was no stanky leg, no.
Did you use any of this dance moves as a mascot?
Yeah, that was kind of why I
Yeah,
signed up. It
that's
was
what I
my
thought.
freshman year, and I needed an elective, and I had no rhythm. I didn't really have rhythm after I left the class, but maybe slightly better.
So you haven't gone into
I knew my
dancing now.
routines. What?
Have you ever performed one of your routines while you're like out at a dance club? Have you ever been to a dance club? I have not. Hands
I've
up.
been dancing at a
Hands
club
up, never been
before.
dancing.
No. I mean these were like sliding on the floor and
Mm.
like doing stuff you would not, I don't think, do at a public dance club where the floor's got some kind of sticky icky on it, you know?
I remember the only time I ever thought I was going to get into dancing was in, I think it was eighth grade,
Oh,
and I bought
nice.
I bought a DVD about breakdancing, teaching you how to break dance.
Oh man, I wish I could find that.
And I was like, man, it's time to get into this. But then I realized, oh, you're too fat to do any of these moves.
You
So it
sprained your ankle like
didn't
week one.
it didn't take off. I was like, I cannot hold myself up for seconds at a time. So
Oh
that
man,
that died.
breakdancing DVDs. What a time.
I believe Vin Diesel was featured on that breakdancing DVD that I bought.
Man, we got to find this.
I mean, I'm sure it's somewhere in our mother's
Yeah.
house. She kept
Oh
everything.
yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
so back to the people, the end of this. So every player involved was permanently banned from the NBA, and also a lot of them, a few of them. Well, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but some of them were also banned from the MLB. So like other leagues joined in to keep them banned. Some did play in the minor leagues. We'll talk about that in a bit, but not very many of them. NBA ref, as I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to go through some of the sentencings. So NBA ref Saul Levy, who mentioned he did 3 years in prison and then got murdered. Most of the players involved were given 6 month sentences, though several of them were given suspended sentences, especially because a lot of them had served or were serving in the army.
Mm,
Salvatore Salazzo, the kind of the kingpin to some degree, was given an 8 to 16 year sentence for which he served 12 years. His agent Eddie Gard was given a 3 year sentence and served 9 months. Fixer Kay Klafowski died while awaiting trial, and because a lot of his charges were what implicated the Toledo players, when he died, all the charges against the Toledo players were dropped, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but that was what they did back in the 50s, I guess. Jackie Goldsmith spent a few years in prison for his part of this scheme. And then here we go. Bill Spivey, his trial was resulted in a mistrial, hung jury, because most of the jury agreed with him that he should not have been in trouble and that he should not have had to go for perjury. But he was still banned from the NBA. And he eventually tried to sue the league in 1960 for $800,000, which in 2024 money is $8.5 million.
good Lord.
And
Wow.
ultimately, he accepted a settlement of $10,000, which is far less than what he originally wanted. There's one last guy that I haven't mentioned on purpose, but he was probably involved. His name is Jack Malinas. And the reason I have not mentioned this former Columbia and NBA player is because he wasn't caught during this scandal, but when he was caught later, it came out that he was probably involved in all of this. And we are going
I
to
feel like
have
I
an
know that name. Did he do something?
Oh, we're going to have a whole episode about
Oh,
Jack Malinas
sorry.
at some point
Okay.
in the future.
Come.
So we'll definitely dig into him later. So I'm gonna save him. He's gonna be put off to the side. Potentially remember that name in your memory banks, and we'll get back to him later. Unfortunately, the scandal and the ensuing fallout didn't really stop the gambling. Even at the time, many were complaining that Hogan had a pro-Catholic bias, and he wasn't targeting Catholic schools or
Yeah.
schools in Philadelphia who were also rigging games at the time. And
Okay.
to give some credence to those notions, we this is not the last time that the sport was hit by major rigging scandal. But again, we will talk about that in a future episode. We're not going to talk about the next major scandal. We'll get there at a later date. So now here's what happened to a lot of these people. So Kentucky ultimately was able to overcome the scandal. As I said, they took off 1 year of basketball and nothing really happened to them after that. But Coach Adolph Rupp did end up sticking around for several years longer than he planned. He was thinking about retiring for health reasons, and he ended up coaching through 1972. CCNY, the one of the, this is kind of called the CCNY point shaving scandal. They're kind of the central figure.
Mm.
They continued to have more athletic scandals. They had players, forging their grades. They had players getting paid to do jobs they weren't actually working, all kinds of stuff like that. So the school just de-emphasized its athletic program and became a D3 school.
You got to pay these kids. I mean, come on. They're desperate up there. Sheesh.
Long
Cost of
Island,
living's too high.
Long Island shut down its entire athletic program, every sport, from 1951 to 1957, and did not return to D1 sports until the 1980s.
Yeah, might as
Brad,
well. Just screw it. Like, let's get everyone that was involved out, all the coaches gone, and then we'll just try again later.
yeah, Bradley, they are the only team outside of Kentucky that has ever been ranked again. And that is also not without some controversy, which will again come up in a later episode.
Okay.
NYU was also involved in that same scandal we're going to talk about later. So, as you can see, a lot of these teams are moving forward with their cheating ways, and they have since become a D3 program. They have been in D3 since 1983. So, most of these programs, with the lone exception of Kentucky, have all fallen off from their
Dang.
former heights. As for what happened to the players, I'm going to go through a couple of them, not all of them. Actually, a good number of them, but not all of them. So Spivey won 3 titles in the Eastern Professional Basketball League, which was essentially the precursor to the G League, and he
Okay.
he
Yep.
won he won the league's MVP award in 1959. Hirsch, who was one of the guys who accused Spivey of being involved, he played no professional basketball. Instead, he went into the military and then worked for a packing company for several years. Alex Groza, one of the guys who had signed a deal with the Indianapolis Olympians for part ownership, got into coaching. He even coached in the ABA for a few years, but moved on from the game in 1975 and just worked a normal job. Ralph Beard, the other guy, along with Groza, who bought the Indianapolis, or not bought, got shares for the Olympians. He tried to go play pro baseball, but the MLB barred him from playing there as well. So he moved into a career in pharmaceuticals. Barnstable, who was also with Groza and Beard in college, but then did not go on to play pro basketball. He actually became a relatively successful golfer. He won the Kentucky Senior Open as an amateur 2 times. And his twin daughters came to some fame as the actresses in the 70s show Quark, which lasted for 2 seasons. Fun fact.
Wow.
Melkor, he worked in sales for a long time. Here's maybe where it gets sad to some degree, kind of like how we talked about how Connie Hawkins got screwed. Sherman
Hmm.
White, to some degree, got screwed. He was one of the only players from his school that really got in trouble. He had to go to Rikers Island prison and serve for 9 months. Some people,
Sheesh.
it's come out. Some people think that it's because he had some priors from being a youth.
Hmm.
I would argue it might be have to do something with the color of his skin potentially,
Racially
but I don't know.
motivated.
I don't know that for sure. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I don't.
The
There's
time period would back you up.
there's one thing different about him and some of the other players. So Sherman White, he after he got out of prison was the the Eastern Professional Basketball League MVP in '55, and won a title in 1961. In 2007, the Draft Review named him, quote, the best basketball player you never knew. He widely regarded as a guy who could have been the missing piece for the Knicks and probably would have been a perennial all-star in the NBA
Yeah.
if he had been allowed to play.
There was an Eastern Basketball League.
Yeah, Eastern Professional Basketball League.
Oh, I bet that was the most lunatic. Like, I bet every single bet. I mean, with all these guys coming out of college or all these
Yeah.
East Coast colleges, I bet these guys were fixing everything. I bet it was encouraged by the league commissioner.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you might not be wrong. I mean, there's not a lot out there about the Eastern Professional League because it's just, most people focus on the NBA and the ABA, right? The EPBL is kind of like the precursor to the G League. So it was where you sent
I'm
players who,
actually
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
it was where you sent players to develop if they weren't playing well in the NBA
Oh,
a lot
okay.
of times.
Okay. I've now come up with a better idea. So they're doing the steroid Olympics.
Are they?
For those who don't know, there's a guy who wants to hold his own Olympic Games where
Okay.
everything's allowed. Like you can
Yeah.
do as many steroids as you want or PEDs. Because basically he's saying like everyone does it anyway, so we might as well just like not
Yeah.
lie about it. What if we
Let
did
me, I'll just say,
a
I'm,
fixed league?
I think, what would be like, so basketball, but the WWE?
Yes, like everyone knows what's going on. I guess Yeah, I guess there is some like if both because I guess the player or the teams would work together to be like you're gonna win, you're gonna lose, and there's not much of a product.
I mean, it
Um,
depends on how exciting it is, right? I mean, people watch the Harlem Globetrotters. That's fixed to some degree.
that's fair, but I'm just saying like if it was just open betting and it was like if you could just like let's say there's a game going on
Yeah.
and then there's a ticker that comes up at the top and it's like the most people bet on LeBron James to score the points, and so everyone's like pass LeBron the ball, like almost like each every so often in the game there's different like things that you can bet on.
Yeah.
It's almost like a fan driven game.
Is this,
And
have you heard
then
of, okay, have you heard of fan controlled football?
no, but that sounds exactly like what I'm saying.
Okay. I don't really
But
know
with a
much
betting
about it.
element. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know much about it, but I think it's kind of what you're describing, but for
So
football.
it's like during the first quarter, who's going to score the most points in the second quarter? And
Uh,
then the total goes live
yeah.
and then the players and maybe there's bonuses for the defense like if he doesn't score the most points, then you get a bonus. But if LeBron and his team can will him to score all the points and score the most points in the quarter, everyone gets paid. I don't. I'm just spitballing here, but we
Okay.
got to go for like some. There needs to be more. I know that there. I have like ESPN is sponsored now by gambling leagues and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess we have a lot of access, but one, it's illegal in a lot of states, so you can't do it. But I would just love like you get to watch and bet at the same time.
So I don't know if there's any betting happening in fan controlled football, but I am reading about it right now on Wikipedia. So, not the most reputable thing, but it looks like uh, fans in real time would vote on all offensive plays. So
Oh,
they
I love
whatever
this.
the fans voted for, the players had to run.
Yep.
And also the fans voted on the outcome of instant replay reviews.
So
So
it's like playing Blitz, but you just get to watch it play out live.
yeah,
Love it.
I mean that'd be great. Okay, so let's finish this
All
up.
right.
We're almost here at the end. Floyd Lane, who had previously coached at CCNY, excuse me, played at CCNY, he then became the
Hmm.
coach there from 1974 to 1988. Erwin Dambrot, who had been a seventh overall pick by the Knicks, but just wanted to be a dentist, stuck to that. He just led a normal life as a dentist. But his nephew Keith coached LeBron James at St. Mary St. Vincent during his high school
Oh,
career.
okay.
Several other guys. Ed Warner he won two Eastern Professional Basketball League titles in 58 and 59. Ed Roman won an EPBL title in 57 and worked as a teacher in Queens. And Alvin Roth got into insurance sales after a few years in the EPBL. And that is the story, roughly, of the 1951 point shaving scandal that
Wow.
rocked the NCAA.
Bring it back. I'd love
Bring
to
it back.
see. Yeah, I want more games to be gambled on.
I mean,
Who do we who if no one knows, who do we hurt? You know what I mean?
I mean,
You're right. The players are getting paid. I never mind.
well, but it's still happening, right? I mean, we know that sports are getting, players are taking. I mean, it's still happening. It's going to get worse the more gambling becomes a thing in sports. We know, there was that one guy in the NBA, right? That got caught betting on his own games.
Yeah, there was a crazy one.
And I
There
think
was also another that was like, I didn't do it, and the account had like 10,000 transactions. It was
yeah.
like, you definitely did it, buddy.
And I think it just recently came out that a bunch of soccer players did it, including the U.S. player Weston McKennie for Juventus, were betting on their own games.
Sheesh.
So it's definitely still happening. And if you can, and especially with that, if you can bet on your own games, then I mean, you're completely implicated because if you bet
Right,
against yourself and then you play poorly,
right.
I mean, it completely ruins athletic like achievement because then it doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah. Well, and you're never like getting like no one's gonna be backing up to give you the Brinks truck to give you a new contract if they're just like, well, we might lose the biggest game of our lives
Yeah.
because someone comes calling with money to have you screw us over. So I
So
wouldn't
so
trust
would
you.
you like in all seriousness, would you still watch sports if you knew that this rampant of gambling was happening all the time? Because to me, it like
Yeah.
loses all of its draw.
If it was this rampant, probably not. Yeah.
Because I mean, I guess maybe not because I mean, I don't watch the WWE right now, but I have watched wrestling before
Yeah.
and liked wrestling. So maybe if it's completely fake, it would still be fun if they make the storylines fun. Maybe then Oklahoma City could
Yeah.
get a title for once.
That's, I was gonna say it's either no one is in on it or everyone is in on it. If
Yeah,
it's a story, that's different.
yeah.
Now, I don't want the NBA to turn into a story, but I'm saying if there was a basketball league show where it was like predetermined what was going to happen, I watch basketball movies all the time,
Hmm.
so that's fine. But if it was like all the players are accepting money and you don't know what the outcome's going to be, that definitely takes away from the product. Like I would be heartbroken all the time, and it would just be like, well, it's not even worth watching
Yeah,
because the bookie has determined the outcome.
right.
So yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, get gambling out of sports, and it will never happen. But it has
Yeah.
gone it has gone way too far.
Eh. It's just, I think because it doesn't happen on a large scale, I find it funny. But if it was like happening all the time, it's a slippery slope and it would be bad
A
for sure.
slippery slope to food hell. Have you watched Joe is Hungry?
No, sorry.
You haven't watched? Okay, if you haven't watched Joe's Hungry and you're listening to this podcast, please stop it right now. You don't have to listen into this and go watch some Joe's Hungry videos. He's the best editor on YouTube, and
Mm.
you know, watch out for the sneaky doodle bite. It'll get you.
Oh, okay. I know that. Yeah, you showed me this YouTube guy.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Do you have
I don't.
anything else?
I wouldn't call it good. I'd call it insane. But
Do you have anything else you want to talk
uh,
about before we get out of here?
go Knicks. Can't wait.
Oh my God, get
Playoffs
out
this
of Go
week, baby.
away. Go
Play
away. All
in.
right. Yeah, so we'll be back in a couple of weeks with something different. We'll probably stay, I'm gonna save some of these because they do take a long time to make. So it'll probably be a while before we get to the next scandal. Just keep it, well, not the next scandal, the next point shaving or fixing
Hmm.
scandal. But we got to do Jack Malinas. We got to do the 1961 scandal. Those are kind of intertwined. We got to someday we're gonna have to do Donaghy. We
I
got to do them
know.
all, baby. So
Hello.
we'll go ahead and get out of here. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Peace.